can we please give a huge ba-ba-ba, cheer, whoop, and welcome to the wonderful Professor Lynne Murphy.
Thank you. All right, so do you remember New Year 2022? No. Well, I mean, we were all looking forward to Christmas. And it was so exciting because we were going to be able to see people again in Christmas 2021. But then something happened, something called Omicron. And we were all home alone, waiting for something to happen, something that would excite us. And so we had these infections happening, but at the same time there was another infection happening. You can see in the light green line, it started a bit slower, but then it took off faster. It was a more virulent infection than we had seen before. And that infection was Wordle, okay? 90 users in November 2021. 2 million users by the end of January 2022. Wordle had us all captured, well, a lot of us at least. So much so that by the end of that month, that January 2022, it had made somebody a millionaire. Yeah. And by the end of that year, it was the most Googled word in the world, Wordle. Now, there may be some of you out there who do not know what Wordle is, so let's just have a quick recap. Wordle is a word game that's played online. It's a phone app, and the object of the game is to guess the 5-letter word that is the winning word for the day. And you're told what the word is, essentially, by where the green squares are. So yellow square means you've got the right letter but not in the right place. Green square means you've got the right letter in the right place. The game was invented by a guy named Josh Wardle, and he's pictured here with his girlfriend Palak Shah. And so he designed the game for his girlfriend, for his family members, because it was lockdown, it was boring, and he's a computer programmer. And so he came up with a way to entertain his family, and of course we know it became much bigger than that. But how responsible is Josh Wardle for Wordle? If you look in the Oxford English Dictionary, we can see that the word Wordle has been around since Middle English, when it was a word or a way of spelling and pronouncing the word world. So Wordle is the whole world. When he came up with a name for it, or when somebody came up with a name for it, it was a pun on his name, Wordle. But another thing that people noticed when Wordle came out was it bore a resemblance to a game that many of us knew from our childhood. Do you remember this one? Okay, so Mastermind, invented by a company in Leicester. And here we have the classic Mastermind. See if you can spot the pattern in the Mastermind boxes, because then we've got Super Mastermind. Then we've got the bigamous Grand Mastermind. And you do kind of have to wonder who in the picture is the mastermind. When we start getting away from the whole British imperial sort of vibe we've got going on here, and Mastermind moves to other places, in Poland it looks quite different. And you definitely have the feeling that she's the mastermind, don't you? And my favorite one is Brazil. Brazilian mastermind. So just as a side point, so Mastermind is not a word game. It's a game of guessing where different spots are on a board, but it bears some resemblance to the word game Wordle. In researching those covers, I found out a little bit about these people. So he was an owner of a hairdressing chain in Leicester, who was asked to be the model for this. And she was not originally meant to be in the picture. They needed her. And she was just her name was Cecilia Young, I think, or maybe from, they just found her out on the street. She was a computer science student at the university. They grabbed her in and had her model for that picture. A bit later, they had a reunion picture. She was not meant to be in that picture. She was meant to be a cat. But the cat did not behave on the day. The cat weed on the guy who was the hairdressing model. And so we have Cecilia gracing the cover of Mastermind. But anyway, back to Wordle. Wordle isn't quite like Mastermind because Mastermind does not tell you which items are in the right spot. It only tells you some things are in the right spot and some things are in the wrong spot, and you have to guess which spot it is. So there is a Wordle substitute that is more like Mastermind. It's called Wordle, and it's much, much, much harder than Wordle. So if you want to try something harder than Wordle, do that. So we have Mastermind as a possible precursor to Wordle, but then we also have this. So this is from 1987. We have sound. Keep talking? I'm just going to talk.
Just have to do something.
As we rejig the audio for our... It worked before?
Now it should.
Now it should work. Okay. So this 1987 television clip should give us...
Try going back one. There we go.
Pam, and here's your first word for this Monday. It begins, Pam, with the letter A.
Amble, A-M-B-L-E. Audio, A-U-D-I-O. About, A-B-O-U-T.
Okay. So that's basically Wordle. And if you've been at home on an afternoon, you might have seen this show. It's had a resurgence. It's on Channel 5 now, I think. But this was the original in 1987. And in case you're wondering who that charming host was, he was one of, the early Nepo babies. That was Michael Reagan taking advantage of his father's fame in the 1980s. But anyway, so the game essentially has been around for long before Josh Wardle made it up and became a millionaire, became one of Time magazine's most influential people of 2022. Does that mean we should disregard what he's done? Does that mean he didn't earn that money? Well, I think he did a few special things. For one, he made it into an app, right? So that we could all play it. For another, he made it sort of addictive. By there only being one a day released, it made people more willing to engage with it. It wasn't going to be the big time sink that some other phone games are. So people who didn't play phone games started playing Wordle. He's not really responsible for this. The shareable results, so those green and yellow and gray blocks that people share on social media. He did not invent that. Some fans of the game in New Zealand just started doing that, and then that became part of the game's sort of package. But he incorporated that into the game. But what I think was really important about this invention of Wordle was the word list that he uses. And that is not his doing. That is his girlfriend's doing, so that was Palakshah. So he sent her a list of the more than 10,000 five-letter words of English that one can find in various sources. And she went through and chose the ones that she thought people would know. And once she chose those, that whittled that list of more than 10,000 down to about 2,300. And so those are the words that can win Wordle. The other 8,000 are playable in Wordle, but they will never be the winning item. Now the ones that are in yellow are ones that, at the time when I made this slide a couple of months ago, had not yet won. And the ones in green have won, so they will never win again. Or at least won't for the first 6 years or so that we've got Wordle doing a different word every day. That word list, so Wordle is a Welshman living in Brooklyn, New York. His girlfriend, I believe, is an American. She chose the word list. And so the word list is the words that an American would know. Okay, and so when some words that Americans use a lot more than British people do, or people from other parts of the world, started coming into Wordle, they started getting the dictionaries excited because finally people were using the dictionaries again, looking up words like caulk, which you'd call sealant more often in Britain, but in America we call caulk. When words without U's started showing up in Wordle, there was a lot of, a small selection of the many journalistic hours that were spent on this issue. But it really came to a head when May 23rd, 2022, Homer was the winning word, because it is a term in American baseball. It is a term that's found in the UK for other things like homing pigeons, but it was not a word that everybody knew, and so it spiked the most lookups in some dictionaries for the year and became the Cambridge Dictionary Word of the Year for 2022. It spawned all sorts of imitators in different languages. In Chinese, because Chinese is not spelt with letters, you guess the idiom. In other languages, you guess the word. I, at first, was playing in Swedish and French as well as English because my vocabulary in those languages was good enough for five-letter words. But the thing is, it's no fun in those languages. It's really no fun in French. It's way too easy. And in Swedish, 6 guesses is rarely enough because Swedish has 9 vowels to English's 5. So English is the best. Count on a British audience for some chauvinism. So English is the best because English is the worst. Because we have such a messed up spelling system, right? We have, 6 syllable types that they're teaching to little children because, it's hard to, it's very easy to put together a word in English because we let anything in, basically. And so that means that when you're playing Wordle, the possibilities are really great for where any particular letter can be. So the possibilities of English, because it's a Germanic language, it likes to stack up consonants. So we can have as many as 3 consonants at the front of the word, as many as 4 at the back of the word. Because it's related to French or because it's got a lot of vocabulary from French and Latin, we can have a lot of vowels in a word, up to 3 at the beginning, up to 4 at the end. So it makes it a much more interesting, more spicy language to play this kind of game in than another language would be. And this is just sort of to show that, and the colors have gone out again, that about, badge, grant, cleat, cobra, there's A in every single position. There's B in every single position. There's C in every single position. There are only 4 positions no 5, counted wrong, where particular letters cannot go in a Wordle grid. You cannot end a word with a V. You can have a V anywhere else. You cannot end a word with a J, but you can have a J anywhere else. And that's because English is such a magpie language. We get words from so many different places. And we allow them in with all kinds of spellings, right? So we've got all of our H's, all of our I's, our various J's, because we've got words from Greek, words from Inuit, words from Japanese, words from Dutch. We also, in the case of vinyl, have a word that's half Latin, half English, right? We do all sorts of weird things with words in English, and that makes it a great word game, spelling game language. And 5 letters is the perfect number of letters to do that with. With 5 letters, you've got 16% of the words ending in E, 7% ending in R. Once we go up to 6 letters, the words get more predictable, right? More letters, more words ending in E, more words ending in R, and that will go up as we go into larger words. So the less predictability, the more fun the game. But if you really want to play 6-letter words with U's in them, there is a version called Wordle, where you can play honor and favor with U's. Again, it is an easier game. So the 5-letter version, I would say, is more fun. Big question everybody wants to know is what's the best starting word for Wordle? Everybody's got their favorite. How many people here play Wordle? Woo! Yay! I found my audience. And I'm sure you have some interesting starting words. I was interviewed by more than one newspaper, more than one radio program about this topic, and at the same time, the computer scientists were all going, we know, we've got the best words. We know what is the best thing to ask a computer. These are the words that the computer scientists came up with. So, 3 computer science teams all coming up with different words is one thing to notice here. Another thing to notice here is that one of the words, I don't even know if it's salads or salé, it's never going to win Wordle. So you'll never get Wordle in 1 if you start with that word. And yet the computer thinks that's the best way to go. And that's why they've discovered that computers are not actually very good at Wordle. That Wordle reasoning requires sort of people power. And part of that people power is knowing what are the likely words, what are the 2,300 words versus the 10,000 words. Okay? So on the topic of best starting words, I asked my friends what theirs were, and I asked them to share their statistics screens with me, and I came up with this. So this is a statistics screen for Wordle. It lets you know how many words you've got in 1 guess, 2 guesses, 3 guesses, etc. And the goal with Wordle, if you've continued to play Wordle past the first couple of months, your goal is not to win Wordle, because Wordle is very winnable. You only don't get it, maybe every few months. Maybe even longer if you're lucky. But if you're serious about it, what you want to do is get your average down, right? You want to have an average score well below 4. So I looked at my friends' scores and their starting words, and as you can see, I've got one friend who's incredible, 3.3, way ahead of the rest. And her starting words, she varies them, are the same as some of the starting words of the people who did much worse. So this is kind of telling us that it's not all about starting words, it's about thinking. It's about how you think through the problem. If you're starting with a Dieu, or tears, or sated, you will never get Wordle in 1. So just give up. That's not a good starting word. If you're playing any of these words as your starting word, you are not going to get Wordle in 1 because they have already been the winning word. Okay, so you might want to change your strategy. But as you can see, it doesn't matter a lot. We've got people at the top who are using 4 consonants in their starting word, people who are using 4 vowels. They're still all doing very well. So it is, I think, more about thinking power than about starting words. So I would like to encourage you to vary your starting words. And on that note, if you haven't started playing Wordle, I can only recommend it. You will become obsessed with 5-letter words. But look at how much we can do with 5 letters. And on that note, I'd like to say, thank yous, grateful.
Fantastic. The wonderful Professor Lynne Murphy. Thank you so much, Lynne.